All right, we're ready to go for turn number one. Each turn has a sequence of play, and it's listed here on one of the player aids. Step one is friendly card phase. Step two is friendly order phase. Step three is enemy card and order phase. Step four is the action phase, and this is the step that'll have most of the time spent in it. And then step five is the end phase. Most of these phases are themselves broken up into several different steps. The friendly card phase, the first step says if you don't have any cards, go ahead and draw one from the cup. But again, we do. We already have our cards. Second step says if any cards are placed to the side from the previous turn, to go ahead and add them to your hand at this time. There is an order that can be given to your soldiers to have them add cards to your hand, but we haven't come across that yet. The next step says if you have more than 5 cards in your hand, you've got to discard down to 5. And then the next step says the player must now play 1 card from his hand to the initiative track. And so I need to pick one of our 3 cards, and I need to go ahead and play it. I'm not entirely sure which card I want to go with. All of the cards have these initiative values, and the initiative values again determines which team goes first in each impulse, lower numbers being better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this card number 4, for my initiative, for the initiative values, which is Charlie and Baker companies are the 2 I'm going to use, and those numbers are 30 and 52. It is a discard card, which means I don't have any other things to do during this phase. And so I've gone ahead and placed that on the initiative mat, and we'll take a look more at that here in just a second. The last step of this step 1 says if it's an order card, deal with the order. We're not going to do that. The next step says go ahead and place orders or give orders to your soldiers. Now, I believe there's 19 different orders for friendly forces. Dealing in firing, moving, throwing grenades, and several miscellaneous orders. I've created a little bit of a cheat sheet for me to use so I can remember which orders are under which areas, and instead of having to refer back to the rule book all the time. And so that's what I'm looking at right now. You'll notice my guys are down here. Probably want to move up to engage the enemy. Right now they can't see any of the enemy, so they can't fire. Not in range to throw grenades, and the miscellaneous orders really have not a whole lot of importance right now. So what that means basically is at least for this first turn, I want to give a movement order. Now there's several different movement orders. There's a charge order where you charge an enemy, but we can't supply that order because we need to be closer to enemies. Which means we have sprint, evade, sneak, and run and gun. Now, sprint, evade, and sneak are all orders where the only thing the character can do is move. Run and gun allows the character to both move and shoot should the opportunity arise. And so that's actually what I'm going to do for all 6 characters. I'm going to supply run and gun orders. My plan is to have Charlie team move up this side of the board, and my plan is to have Baker team move up towards the house, and then see if we can't catch our soldiers in a crossfire. So I'm going to go ahead and give run and gun orders, and I'll show you the marker here. This is the run and gun. You'll notice there are several different numbers and boxes down here. Those are what this particular order allows the soldier to do during each impulse. We'll talk more about that once we get to the action phase. But I'm going to go ahead and give the run and gun order to each soldier under my control. And we're now done with that step of the sequence of play. Now, the next step in the sequence of play is the enemy orders and card phase. However, if you'll recall back here in the scenario book, it says after assigning the initial friendly orders, roll a 1d6 for each character and assign these specific orders. So normally I'd draw a card here, but because of the scenario specific instructions, I don't. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into 3 different groups, do the 4 characters, each one of those groups, and just rolling a die. The first one is a die roll of 6, and that is what's called a sneak 6 order. Now, I'll show you what that looks like on the order chit. So here we are, sneak and 6. Now, sneak is a movement order, and this 6 tells me what direction that the soldier can move based on what that direction is up there on that compass heading. So that soldier gets a sneak 6. The red soldier to his right rolls a number 1, and that is what's called evade 5-6. And here I'll show you this one as well. Evade 5-6. When you have 2 numbers, that means on some impulses you move in one direction, some impulses you move in the other direction. The red soldier, again to the right, rolls a 6, and he also gets a sneak 6. Now, the difference between a sneak and an evade move is that an evade move, a character moves on each impulse. A sneak move, he only moves on one, on some of the impulses. Some of them he doesn't. Basically, how fast are you moving? Finally, we have the blue. He rolls a 1, and he gets an evade 5-6. So let me find another evade 5-6 marker. Here we go. That squad of 4 soldiers is taken care of. I'm now going to do this squad here. We'll do the red soldier first. He rolls a 5. That is a sneak 5 order. So we'll give him a sneak 5. We'll do the blue one just to his right. We roll a 5, which also is a sneak 5 order. Let me find the sneak 5 order. Here we go. And the reason I say let me find one, I'll just show you. These are the German orders. They take up almost a whole full tray by themselves. It would be nice to have the table space to lay out these orders in the numbers as well, make it very easy to find. And just to show you, these are my friendly orders, and I have yet a 3rd counter tray with miscellaneous counters in them. All right, we're going to do the blue right below on the tree. Rolls a 5, and he gets a sneak 5 order. Lots of sneaking, lots of 5s. And on the compass, 5 is straight down, 6 is kitty corner down to the left. We'll do our final blue soldier in that group. He gets a 2, and that's an evade 6-5. So let me find an evade 6-5. Put that on him. We've now got those up above. We'll do the red soldier first. He rolls a 2. That's an evade 6-5. Let me find one here. Sometimes these can take a while to find just because there's so many different markers to look through. Kind of like now. Here we go. Found one. I've never yet run out of the markers, so there are plenty. We'll do the blue to the right. He rolls a 4. That is an evade 6 marker. Here's an evade 6. And again, the difference is a 6, a single number means he's going to move in the same direction every impulse. 2 numbers means he's going to move in different directions. The next one is a 1, which is an evade 5-6. No, that's a 5-4. Here we go. Another 5-6. And then finally, the last order to give is a 5, which is a sneak 5. So let me go ahead and find another sneak 5. There's a 4, there's another 4. Wow. Christmas. Where is that sneak 5? He's got to be in here, but he's sneaking around. I know, bad pun. I'm full of those. Another sneak 4, a sneak 2. Well, there we go, finally at the bottom of the last one I looked at. All right, we've now given our blue forces and our red forces their orders as applied from the scenario book. However, we do still need to draw a card for initiative levels. And you draw 1 card per team. So we're going to draw 2 here. This will be for the red team. I'll show it to you here. Here's our initiative value. The red team for this turn will have an initiative value of 37. Had this been a normal turn, we would then find orders here. But we'll go ahead and place that on our card. And then our blue orders, our initiative value is 75. All right. I'm actually going to show you now the cards area. We've got our friendly card with initiative values. We've got our German team cards with initiative values. Now it's time to actually set up the initiative track. Our initiative values here start out with Charlie team with 30. And they're going to go first. They're the lowest initiative value. The next is red team with 37. Then we have Baker team with 52. And finally, blue team with 75. And so, for each of the 4 impulses this turn, Charlie team will go first, then red team, then Baker team, then blue team. All right? So we'll move back up to the board. So, this is the first impulse. This is the first action phase. In the action phase, you do 3 things. Each impulse, and I'll show you here. You can perform the action or the order as required. You can then make a spotting check to see if you can see enemy characters. And then you can choose to do what's called duck back. That's basically a way if all of a sudden you now see an enemy or an unfriendly character, you can duck back in and try to gain some cover. So, and then you do each of those 3 things one at a time for each member of a team. And every member of a team does get activated every impulse. So the first team is Charlie team. That's these 3 guys here. And what we're going to do here first is that, you remember I showed you those numbers earlier. What do those different numbers mean? And again, I'll just pull up this run and gun order. All right, there's 4 separate boxes here. They each have, in this case, black ones and red ones. Here's what those numbers mean. A 0 means you don't do anything. You don't move, you don't fire. You can still spot or you can still use duck back. A black 1 means you must move 1 hex. You can't not move. You must move 1 hex. A blue 1, which we may or may not see here, means you can move 1 hex if you want to. You don't have to, but you can. A red 1. When you have a red 1, as we do in this run and gun for impulses 2 and 4, that means you can fire at a known, spotted, within line of sight enemy character. Now, friendly forces, you can choose whether or not you want that person to fire. There may be situations where you don't want the character to fire. However, for enemy characters, if they have a red 1, and again they have a spotted known friendly character in line of sight, they must fire. So a red 1 for player forces can fire if they want. Enemy forces must fire. A black 2 in one of these boxes mean you must move 2 hexes. And you can't move the same hex twice. And M, it means you must engage in melee combat. We may or may not see that here in this video series. And those are what those numbers mean. So, we are ready to go. We go Charlie team first. We will start off with this character right here, which is Private Walsh. He's got a black 1, so he must move. And I'm just going to move him forward 1. Now, he's moved. He now has to decide whether or not to spot and whether or not to duck back. I'm looking here. All of these enemy characters are unknown. You can see just the black cross, German cross, on the back of a character means that character is unknown. And you must spot them in order to have them become known, and you can't fire until the character is known. I have no chance of spotting any character. You can see most of them are behind this hedge line. Hedges, trees, rocks, always all block line of sight. Logs may or may not block line of sight. Tall grass here may or may not block line of sight, depending on other factors. These fields, these cornfields, never block line of sight, and then open terrain never blocks line of sight. And line of sight is measured from center hex or center dot to center dot. This character has no chance of spotting anybody. Every single enemy character on the board is behind a blocking terrain. So he's done, and I also don't want to have him duck back. We'll then go ahead and do Private Corporal Thomas. He's also going to move forward 1. And same thing, he can't see anybody. And then Private Stubbs will move forward 1. He can't see anybody. They've all 3 done their Impulse 1 action. They've all 3 determined they cannot spot. They've all 3 then determined that they do not want to duck back. That is the end of the Impulse for Charlie Company, or Charlie team. We then move to the next team, which is the red team. Now, for enemy activations, you always start at the top of the map and work your way down. And then if 2 characters happen to be at the same height, the one closest to an enemy character moves first. Well, our topmost red character is this one right here. And he's got an evade 6-5 order. And on an evade order, again, I'll show it to you here. He's got a 1-1-1-1 for all 4 impulses. That means he must move 1 hex each impulse. And he's got 2 different numbers, 6 and 5. In this situation with an evade order, that means on the first and third impulses, he will move in direction 6. And direction 6 is kitty corner to the left. Whoops. And then on the second and fourth impulses, he will move straight down. And so he moves, and he moves right onto the road. Now, enemy characters also do the spotting. They don't do duck back on your choice. There are specific situations where an enemy may do a duck back. So kind of looking here, he can't see any of these 3 characters, absolutely not. He can't see either of these 2 characters because of the hedge. I doubt very much, and I'm just going to do a quick eyeball test. I don't know, and so I'm just going to do some checking here real quick. I always use the player aid to check my line of sight. Yeah, it's going to hit this hedge here, so he also cannot see. And so he also checks for spotting. He cannot spot, so we move on. The next one would be this one, this one here rather. He also has an evade order, but his is 5-6, which means he moves down first and then to the left. And so he moves down into the cornfield. Can he spot? These guys are all behind hedges, so the answer is no. And so he's done. We have 2 red characters that are both at the same level, top to bottom. So therefore the one closest, and that would be this one, acts first. He has a sneak order, and in a sneak order, the first impulse is a 0. And remember, a 0 means he doesn't do anything, so he stays. As it happens, this red character also has a sneak order. So again, he has 0 and he doesn't move. Our final red character is right here. Well, actually, before I go here, it should be noted, even if you don't move or don't fire in a particular impulse, you still have the option of spotting and or ducking back. But again, everybody is behind the hedges, so nothing happens. This player here, or this character here, also has a sneak order, and so he doesn't move. These characters here are absolutely behind the hedge and unable to be seen. And I'm 99.9% certain these guys here are going to, well, actually I can tell you for a fact, they're all behind rocks, and so they can't be seen. That's the end of the red team impulse. We move to the next team, which is Baker team. Now Baker team has my 3 characters down here. They also have run and gun, which means they must move 1 hex, this particular impulse. And I'm trying to move these guys up here into the house and rocks area to maybe set up a fire situation. So I'm going to move Private Johnson 1 hex to here. As far as his spotting check, none of those guys can be spotted. None of these guys can be spotted. But what about that soldier way up there on the road? Can he be spotted? Well, let's take a look. You know, I really think the hex is still in the way, and so I'm going to say no. And so his impulse is done. I'm going to move Private Miller into the hex. Now, with the hedge, something we need to talk about. When a character moves into certain terrain called rough terrain, things that would be rough terrain would be rocks, hedges, and several other things. If you issue a sprint order and move into a rough terrain, you must immediately change your order to duck back. Enemy orders, when they move, they also, if they have a sprint order, same exact deal, but also enemy orders if they move into cover terrain. Cover's a little bit different. Things like grass is cover. Like logs are cover, trees are cover. Cover may or may not be rough terrain. But if an enemy character moves into cover terrain and they have a spotted friendly soldier in line of sight, they may also have to do a duck back. In this particular case, because it's a run and gun order, that doesn't apply to moving into rough terrain. He also can't see anybody because of the terrain. And finally, we're going to move Private Goldstein up to this area here. And same thing, can't see anybody because of blocking terrain. So no spot check, and that's the end of Baker team, this impulse, which leaves us to the blue team. Now the blue team is the more numerous enemy character team. We'll start at the top. He has evade 6. So he moves into this spot here. I don't think, but I don't know for certain, that he can see these characters down here. He certainly can't see these, but can he see Private Johnson here from here? And the answer is going to be no. It goes right through that hex there, so he can't see any of these guys here. So that's the end of his move. Next, we have evade 5-6. And so evade 5 is moved straight down into the cornfield. No chance to see anybody, so he's done. We have a sneak, so it's 0, nothing happens. We have evade 5-6, so he moves straight down. Again, can't see anybody. Over here we have evade 6-5, so he actually moves into the same hex, at least temporarily, with this other blue character. Still can't see anybody due to blocking terrain. This other blue character has a sneak order of 0. He can't move because of the 0. And then this last blue character also has a sneak order with 0. So again, he can't move. And again, there's no spotting because of blocking terrain. That is the end of the blue team for this impulse. And that's the end of the first impulse. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you. At this point, I'm going to move the impulse marker to impulse 2. And then I can go ahead and do impulse 2, starting all over again, this time with the Charlie team. Now, with this impulse and impulse 2, if you look at the run and gun markers, all of my guys have a red 1. Now, red 1, you'll recall, said that if you had a known spotted line of sight to an enemy, you could fire if you wanted to. If you cannot fire, and for run and gun only, other fire orders, this is not the case. But run and gun, if you cannot fire, because there are no enemies in sight, you move. And so that's what I'm going to do. Move him up. Same with these other guys. And there's still no line of sight, so I don't even need to look for that. They move up there. That's the end of Impulse 2 for Charlie team. We now go to the red team and do their second impulse. Again, top to bottom, and then the closest to an enemy character. Here's top. He's got an evade 6-5. Remember, if he's got two numbers there and an evade order, the second number is used this time. He moves straight down the road. So he moved into the road on his first impulse, straight down the road on his second impulse. And now we're going to again look for line of sight. These guys are obviously behind the hedge, a couple of hedges. But these guys here, let's just kind of see. He's looking down. And yeah, it's going to go through the hedge still, so there's still no line of sight here. These guys here are next. They have sneak orders, and on Impulse 2, a sneak order has a 1, so he moves in direction 6. He moves into the cornfield. He also has 6, so he moves temporarily with that marker. But they're the next marker to move, and they have an evade 6. So they move there. So they basically all just move down a little bit. Last, we have a sneak 5. He moves into the rocks. All right, now looking, there's no chance here. Rocks and logs will block line of sight, I believe. Yeah, we've got rocks. We've got rocks, and we've got rocks, so no chance for spotting there. That's the end of red team. We now go to Baker team. Our run and gun, again, red 1s means if they have someone to shoot at, they can if they want to, but if they don't, they must move. We've already determined there's no line of sight to anybody at this point, so we're going to move. Private Johnson moves to here, and you know what? I'm betting we now have line of sight up here. But let's just look to be certain. Yeah, there's no doubt. He's got line of sight to this enemy character, and so we will do our first spot check. The first thing you do when you have a spot check is determine the distance. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 spaces, and if you check in the player aid or the rules, here's a range modifier, 13 spaces, you get a -1 to your spot check roll. So we've got -1 due to the range. But additionally, you also have to check the enemy's order, in this case evade, and their terrain they're on. In this case it's open or road. And checking the chart in the book, an evade order in clear territory is +1. So our distance means we get a -1 modifier, but the order and terrain gives us a +1 modifier. They cancel each other out. So our modifiers are equal here, so we're going to actually go exactly off of our soldiers' troop quality, which in this case is 5. We'll roll a D10, needing a 5 or less to spot that soldier. And we roll a 7. So therefore, that spot check failed. And his impulse is now over. We're going to move Private Goldstein next. He moves up. Does he have a chance, perhaps, to do any spotting here? And I'm going to say no. It's going through the hedge. And I would say no here for rocks, and rocks. So no, he can't spot. And then I'm going to move Private Miller Again, even though they have the red 1 for firing, and if these guys don't have line of sight, he probably doesn't as well. Although, let's just check. Yeah, he's going to have hedge. So he has no line of sight. That's the end of Baker team for Impulse 2. Now we have our blue team for Impulse 2. Start at the top. He has an evade 6 order. He moves right to the road. Now, other characters don't block line of sight, and since he has line of sight to him, he also has line of sight to him. However, he's now going to make a spot check on Private Johnson. And again, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 on the chart for distance is a -1 modifier. But Private Johnson is run and gun in clear terrain. Run and gun in clear terrain is a +2 modifier. So this character actually ends up with a +1 modifier for spotting. His troop quality is 4, with a +1 modifier is 5. And he rolls a 4. That means that Private Johnson has become spotted, so I'll flip him to the spotted side. He is now spotted, which means he is eligible to be fired upon by enemy forces. There are also other factors. We talked about moving and having maybe to potentially duck back because of that. So he's done with his impulse. We'll do him next. He sneaks 5, which is straight down into the hedge. Nothing happens there. He's got an evade 5, 6, so he does a 6. He moves more into the cornfield. I don't know if he has line of sight here or not. And he just might. No, he's going to go over the rocks terrain here, so he has no line of sight. We've got an evade 5, 6, so 6 moves into the cornfield. Over here we have a sneak 6, which means he now shares the same hex as the red soldier. We have an evade 5, which means he comes straight down. And he has a sneak 5 coming straight down. Alright, so blue team is now done. None of those other soldiers had line of sight. So the blue team impulse is over. We are now 2 impulses through, and we'll get ready and go ahead and move to the third impulse in just a moment. All right, continuing on now with the third impulse here in our first turn. It's Charlie team is the team that's active. The third impulse in run and gun orders, which all of my friendly characters have, is a movement 1. So he moves 1. There's no line of sight to anybody. Same here. Same here. No line of sight, no chance to do a spot check for those 3. That's the end of Charlie team's third impulse. We now go to the red team. We start here with evade 6, 5. He moves into the hedgerow. Now again, moving into terrain that is considered rough, like the hedgerow, if he had a sprint order, would mean an automatic change to duck back. But also, if it's cover terrain, and it is, and he has line of sight to a known friendly character, he may also have to duck back. But does he have line of sight at this endpoint? And the answer is no. All of these hedges here block line of sight for him. So he's done. We've got a sneak 0, another sneak 0, and an evade 5. So he moves down to there. Still no line of sight. Our last red has a sneak 0, so he does not move. All right, that's the end of red team. We've now got Baker team. We've got 3 characters. They all have black 1s, so they all need to move. He's going to move here. May or may not. He has no line of sight over here. No line of sight there. He may or may not have line of sight to these characters here. So let's check if he has line of sight. Certainly has line of sight up here except for the logs, and we'll talk about that in a second. This character here is still blocked by the hedges. Let's talk about the logs. Some terrain, and logs are one of them, as well as long grass or tall grass, they block terrain in certain instances. They don't block terrain in other instances. With logs, they block terrain if either of the characters have sneak, hide, rally, or reload. In this case, my character sure doesn't have sneak, hide, rally, or reload, and neither does he. He's in evade. As such, he's in line of sight, and as such, we can go ahead and do a spot check. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 spaces. That's a modifier of -1, and we've got an evade in clear territory. That's +1. So our modifiers cancel out, and we go with just a straight troop quality, which is 5, and we roll a 3. All right, so here we get to see something for the first time. We get to see an unknown enemy character become known. And so you flip up, and in this case, it's a dummy character. If it's a dummy character, you remove it from the board. It wasn't a real character, just kind of fooled our guys for a few minutes. And so we remove him from the game. And remember, about 1 in 3 of the markers in this game for the enemy characters are dummy characters. Alright, so he's done. I'm going to move Private Goldstein to here. No line of sight there. No line of sight there or here. I'm not sure, but I doubt he has line of sight up there. And no, it's going to pass through the rocks. And so we'll do Private Miller as well. And again, same thing, no line of sight anywhere. That means Baker team is finished. Leaving us with the blue team. And so we start from, again, top to bottom, or closest to enemy characters means here first. He's got an evade 5, so he moves. No chance for line of sight. He's got a sneak 0, so he stays where he is. He's got an evade 5, so he moves down. Looks like we're headed for a confrontation here. We've got a sneak 0. We've got an evade 6, which means he moves into the tree. And sneak 0. None of them can have any line of sight to a friendly character. That's the end of the blue team impulse, and that's the end of impulse 3. We now go to impulse 4, the final impulse of the first turn. And once again, we start with Charlie team. Now remember, Charlie team, the run and gun orders that everybody has a red 1 for impulse 4. However, they don't have any line of sight to anybody. And so as such, they have to move. And so I'm going to move the first character, Private Walsh, to there. I'm going to move Corporal Thomas to there. And I'm going to move Private Stubbs to there, into the tree. They still have no line of sight, so their impulse is finished. No chance to do a spot check. We move on now to the red team. We start at the very top and closest to enemy character. That would be here. He's got a sneak 1 and movement of 6, which means he moves onto the hedge. There's no line of sight here because of the hedge. No line of sight here because of this hedge. But what about to Private Walsh? And the answer to that is yes. This hex here, the hedge is a little bit in the way, so no spot check. We then go here. He's also got a sneak 1 in the 6 direction. And he's got an evade 5, so he comes straight down. No chance there. I don't think we have a chance here. Well, doesn't get either of these two because the hedge is right in the way. But for Private Johnson, no, this hedge is going to get in the way as well. So he's done. These guys appear to all be done at this point. Can't recall if I've moved him or not. He would have been here. Yeah, I must have. Or did I? No, I didn't. I'll move him evade 6 to the left there. We have one less, and that's a sneak 5, so he does a straight down. All right, so that's the end, and there's no chance of spotting. So that's the end of the red team. We now do Baker team. Red ones means do they have line of sight to a known character? And right now the answer is no. To a known character, which means they must move. So I move Private Johnson to here behind the trees. No chance for line of sight to any of these, but possibly to that red soldier. No, again, the hedge is going to be in the way. We'll move Private Goldstein. Do just a quick check. No, hedge is still in the way. And Private Miller, again, the hedge is going to be in the way. So no spotting checks happen there. That leaves us with blue team and we'll be done. Sneak 5, he comes straight down the hedge. Evade 6, he moves to here. No spotting there. Spotting here is going to go through the rock, so no spotting. That brings us to this one, which is an evade 6. We've got, looks like we've got a real confrontation starting to develop here. We've got a sneak 6, which means he moves into the rocks here. Now, let's take a look here. There's certainly, other than the logs, there could be line of sight there. So let's check again logs. Logs will block line of sight if either of the characters involved have sneak, hide, rally, or reload. Well, in this case, the enemy character has sneak, so it does in fact block line of sight. We've got an evade 5, which means he comes straight down, and a sneak 5 comes straight down. No line of sight anywhere. So that's the end of the impulse for blue team. That is the end of the impulse. And because it was our 4th impulse, it's the end of that step in the sequence of play. Which means we move on to the final step of the sequence of play, which is the end phase. Several things can happen during the end phase here. The first thing we check for is that at this point, if there were any grenades on the field, they would explode. No grenades, we're good to go. We look to see if there is any medic with an injured soldier also in his hex. There are no medics, there are no injured hex, so there's nothing to do there. We also look to see if there's any characters with a plan order. Remember we talked a little earlier, plan orders is how you get more cards into the game, or one of the ways. No plan orders, so we don't do anything there. Here's where we would add or remove smoke markers. There are no smoke markers on the field at this point, so we don't have to worry anything. If we had any waiting instead of all alert characters, if we had any waiting characters, we'd make a check at this point to see if they become alert. We don't have any waiting characters. Next, we remove all the orders from the different characters. I'll go ahead and remove the orders from the friendly forces. These were all the same, and I'll put them back in the tray. And then I'll go ahead and remove the different German orders, trying to keep them together, getting all the sneaks and then all the evades. And then we do all the different evade orders. Alright. So we've got all the orders off. Remember, we lost one character, one enemy character there because of the spot check turned out he was a dummy character. So those are all the sneaks, those are all the evades. The next step in this phase is to remove, and this all takes place on our charts here. We move the impulse marker back to impulse 1. I move the tracker off the space so we can do that next time. And we move the turn marker to turn 2. Additionally, even though it doesn't say it, I go ahead and discard both our friendly and our German or unfriendly cards. If this were the end of the game, if this were the last turn, you would also now check for victory, but it's not. We've already set our turn marker to the next turn. At this point, we go back and repeat the whole process for turn number 2. Now, couple of things I just want to mention. This took a little bit of time. This turn did. Please know that when you're just playing, turns don't take nearly this long. Number one, I'm running around the board here to make it easier so that I don't get in the way of the camera to move characters and whatnot. You won't have to do that in a normal sense. Number two, you don't have to sit here and talk through everything. But also, the further you get into the game, the fewer characters are going to be on the board, the much quicker it'll go because you have fewer characters to deal with. Additionally, orders start to go much faster once characters become spotted. And so, yeah, this turn took maybe, 45, 50 minutes? Maybe even a little longer. But future turns will start to take much less time. So, that's it for turn number 1. We'll be back shortly with turn number 2.